Hi, this is a thermostatic bar mixer. In this video we're going to have a look at what this is for. We're going to have a look inside this one. I'm going to explain how it works, and I'm going to do a couple of tests to demonstrate how it works. If, like me, you've only ever seen these briefly in hotel rooms and always been a bit confused what was going on with them, this is really just a bath tap. You've got hot water comes in here, cold water comes in here, and mixed water comes out there. The idea is that you set your temperature on this side, and then you just turn it on and off this side, and this bit you should never have to touch once you've chosen your favourite temperature. And you might think, isn't that the same as one of these? And it kind of is. You can kind of set this in one position, and if you're very lucky, it will come up to the same temperature, but quite often you have to do a load of adjustment, and if the flow changes, if there's any change in the incoming water temperature, you have to readjust that, and if you've got a long shower hose, you might spend a lot of time fiddling with it trying to get that right temperature. This has a clever mechanism in it that does that mixing for you, so the temperature coming out here is always relatively constant. So the first question is, what's inside this thing? And inside is subdivided into little channels. I've put a picture here from German Wikipedia of one that's a bit like mine but not quite. Show what's inside mine, we resort to the medium of coloured crayon. So the cold water comes in here, the hot water comes in here and goes along a little channel to the back. These go into the mixer valve through these silver filter strips. The output is here on the end of the mixer. That goes here to a valve which is connected to the left-hand tap, and the mixed water comes out here to the spout. I can show you a little of what's actually inside this thing. So that's the cold channel, that's the hot channel through there, and that's the on-off valve at the far end. You can see it opening and closing there. To make things clearer, I've drawn this out so that water flows from left to right. In this diagram, this is the mixer valve which sets the ratio between hot and cold, and this is the on-off tap which just controls the flow. The key component here is this, which is a block of wax that sits on this end, right in the output of the mixer valve, and that expands when it gets hot, which moves the valve from hot to cold. So when you first turn the water on, it's only taking hot water, and as the water gets hotter, it adds more and more cold until it reaches an equilibrium point. And that's how the output flow stays at a constant temperature. If there's any variation, then it'll expand or contract slightly to change the ratio until it's back where it wants to be. This valve is also moved by this tap, which is connected with springs which oppose each other, and that changes the equilibrium point slightly, which is how you get different temperature set points. I want to do some tests to demonstrate to myself, if no one else, that it does work the way I just told you it works. In this test, we've got water connected to the cold input only, temperature set to 38 degrees, and this tap is on. So let's turn the water on and see what happens. And the answer is nothing, because the mixer valve internally is set all the way over to the hot side. It doesn't care that the cold water. The only way to get water out of it in this state is to turn the temperature right down. More interesting experiment now. We've got the hot input connected to a mixer tap, so we can put cold or hot water input to it, and we've got a thermocouple connected to the output. So let's start by giving it some cold water and see what happens. And it gushes through because the mixer valve is all the way over to the hot side, and this is equivalent to when you first turn the shower on and it's waiting for the boiler to warm up. So let's give it some hot water and see what happens. And I've already warmed the boiler up, so it's now getting 60-degree water coming in, and it should shoot all the way up. It's set to 38 degrees on this tap. Let's see what happens. Maybe it's hard to tell, but what's actually happened is the water is slowed to a trickle because the mixer tap is now switched all the way to the cold, and eventually it will switch off almost completely, and it's stopping that 60-degree water from here coming out of here. And just to prove that, if I turn this tap, it will come out again. So I hope that's demonstrated roughly how this works. That last demo should have shown that it's actually really, really hard to burn yourself if you have one of these. They actually also have an interlock here, so you have to press the red button to turn the temperature past 38 degrees. And it also demonstrated another principle, which is that these start off in the hot position always, and then gradually move themselves to cold, which means that they're going to be up to temperature much, much quicker than if you do what most people do with this style of tap, which is switch them on in the middle, which means they come up to temperature quicker and they waste less water. So the final thing is, should you buy one of these? And I can't answer that for you, but what I can say is back in the 90s, Eddie Izzard had this whole routine about how everyone in the shower turns into a safe cracker, trying to find the sweet spot between burning and freezing. And it's the culmination of a whole segment, gets a standing ovation, and yet these exist, and they almost certainly existed back when she made it. This is a solved problem. If you never want that experience again, get one of these. If you're quite happy to routinely scald yourself a little, by all means stick to one of these. I'm sure you have appliances in your house that routinely electrocute you a little, don't you? So if you want one, this one was 35 quid on eBay. If you've already got nuts like this on your taps, now 150 millimeters apart, and you've got hot on the left and cold on the right, then this is a 5-minute job to install. And don't worry if you're renting, because this one came with a carry case. You can take it with you.